All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Devin Haney is telling Gervonta Davis the truth. They don't love you, man. They don't love you, and you can't force loyalty. Let's talk about Devin Haney's message to Gervonta Davis, which is clearly related to Floyd Mayweather Jr. in this video. All right, welcome back. So, been a lot of back and forth between Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis, and it's a lot of fun too, for me. Love listening to the videos about it, love the conversation about it. I can be a petty dude, and sometimes the more gossipy things in boxing, hey man, that's what we chop it up about. Call it a guilty pleasure. It is what it is. So I've been loving listening to this back and forth between two guys that I think are a couple of the best young fighters in the sport of boxing, and that is Gervonta Tank Davis, the WBA regular lightweight champion, and Devin Haney, the WBC. Man, you might as well call it the WBC regular champion because they got that franchise nonsense up above it. But there's been a lot of back and forth because Devin Haney has been in Las Vegas with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Seems like he's having a really, it's not just some isolated incident of these guys being together for a quick time, for a single point in time. He's working out with him in the gym. It looked like I saw a picture of the dude on a jet, even though I suspect that might have been an older picture, because where would Floyd Mayweather be jetting around to? Maybe Devin Haney was in the club in Las Vegas where Floyd Mayweather Jr. was running around without a mask like he ain't got no sense. But regardless, you guys should be familiar of the scenario, the back and forth around this. Gervonta Davis feels that, or at least it seems as if he feels, by judging what his tweets and Instagram posts have been, that he feels that he's a little bit in his feelings around Floyd Mayweather Jr. because Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis have beef with one another. They are consistently going, and they have been for a while, going back and forth with each other, talking about a fight and who was going to beat who and all that. So Gervonta Davis reasonably thinks that, hey man, that's kind of disloyal, especially if I feel like I'm about to go into war with this guy and somebody that's on my team is hanging out with them and treating them to stuff and giving them pointers. All of that stuff, I think it's reasonable for somebody in Gervonta Davis's position to feel, a bit put off by that. So with that said, Devin Haney gives Gervonta Davis a great piece of advice. And quite honestly, man, it's advice that Floyd Mayweather Jr. needs to hear too. You can't force loyalty. And I think that is a beautiful thing. That's a great point. Gervonta Davis. I often mix up Gervonta and Deontay. It's the Tay at the end of it. Regardless, it's reasonable. It's not smart to believe that somebody's going to have the same set of values that you have. Many people in this world do really take loyalty seriously. They believe that if somebody helped them out, if somebody put them on their way, on their path, that they feel some type of need to pay that person back or to acknowledge what that person has done in their life through their future actions. So if this person's in trouble, they're going to come back, they're going to come when that person's in need. If somebody is attacking that person, they're going to stand up for him, and they're going to stand up for them because of the relationship that they have between the two. That's loyalty. Unfortunately, that's not boxing, because that is truly a business relationship between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Gervonta Tank Davis. And many, many times, dude, loyalty goes out the window when you're talking about profit. Because when you have a business, most times the person and the thing that people are most loyal to is their business. So I think Devin Haney's 100% right. You cannot expect Floyd Mayweather Jr. not to look out for the best interest of his business. And if that is to try to sign recruit a future top welterweight like Devin Haney into their fold. And I know people say that Devin Haney will never sign with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Hey, man, he's got a contractual agreement with Eddie Hearn. Okay, so yeah, he has Devin Haney Promotions, but he also has a co-promotional deal with Eddie Hearn. Devin Haney is probably always going to be in those type of co-promotional deals. Like Floyd Mayweather Jr. started Mayweather Promotions, but most of his early fights were in conjunction with Golden Boy Promotion, who already had the promotional infrastructure there to set up the fights, to do the day-to-day things necessary to get the fight card, to get a successful fight card made. And while Mayweather Promotions was more like just an entity that was Floyd, eventually Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Mayweather Promotions started to grow their promotional companies and be able to do more things outside of really just be the umbrella under which Floyd Mayweather Jr. fights. So Devin Haney, may eventually get to the point where Devin Haney Promotions is really like a full functioning promotional company with multiple fighters underneath it, where the guy whose name is associated with it isn't also a fighter. But for right now, he's going to have to work with other people, and it's reasonable for Floyd Mayweather Jr. to try to work with him. Now, the thing is, though, and I think this is an important thing, loyalty goes both ways. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. should know that, hey, man, you can't guarantee loyalty out of Gervonta Davis either. Now, originally, and I've been on this stance for a while, that, that Gervonta Davis, it should be very thankful that Floyd Mayweather Jr. came into his life. Because in the way that we know, especially people within the LDBC, people that really understand how boxing, not just the LDBC, people in new media, and understand how a lot of these fights and things go down and the way that these fighters' careers progress. Dude, a lot of times, just because you're super talented doesn't mean that you're going to get a shot. Because Gervonta Davis very well could have been treated like a Chris Bird. That's a perfect example for me. Chris Bird, who came out of the amateurs, and there weren't any major managers or promoters trying to get behind him. And in order to get a shot, he had to fight 2 weight classes up his whole career and fight at heavyweight instead of fighting at light heavyweight, where that dude might have been the greatest light heavyweight ever. I mean, just think about this. Instead of Chris Bird being able to fight guys like Arthur Beterbiev and who else? And Bivol at 175 pounds, he has to fight guys like Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko. And I don't know, did he fight Sam Peter and guys like David Tua? He had to do that because he didn't have anybody that supported him early on in his career to get him, let's start you out. Can you make 168? Man, you'll really tear some people up at 168, and then we'll move up to 175. But we don't want you near heavyweight because we don't think that's your optimal weight. That could have easily happened to Gervonta Davis, but it didn't. That said, when you start playing around and start doing things that make somebody doubt your loyalty to them, do not be surprised at all if they don't come around. And when you expect for them to re-sign with you, that they pop off and go over there to somebody like an Eddie Hearn or go off the Top Rank, because there's all of these promoters would love to have Gervonta Davis after the work that Gervonta Davis has done and Floyd Mayweather Jr. did to get his name big. So, at the end of the day, I say definitely make sure that you are on top of your P's and Q's, Floyd Mayweather Jr. with Gervonta Davis, because you very well could lose. You could lose the best thing that you have in his stable trying to get something else for his stable. But at this point, I think, like the likelihood of that happening is small because, I don't see Gervonta Davis necessarily being a guy that is going to, put it this way. He may move, but if Gervonta Davis moves, I think he'll find himself in the same situation he is now with a guy that might care even less. He might even care less about him he's going to go Bob Arum or Oscar De La Hoya is out of the picture, or Eddie Hearn to go fight dudes in it. I don't know, man. It just seems like, at the end of the day, man, I can't wait for boxing to get back, for us to get back into fighting so we can see Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz. And, Devin Haney. Who's Devin Haney going to fight? I think Devin Haney should be fighting Javier Fortuna, but I believe most likely that Eddie Hearn is going to find a way to skedaddle that into being Luke Campbell and not Javier Fortuna, when Javier Fortuna was the original mandatory for that shot. But we'll see what happens. And you let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.